All right, our guest today is Evan Jarschauer and Jessica Meraz. They are the co-owners of Behavioral Help Solutions, a therapy, counseling, and intervention practice. Jessica is a graduate of New York University. She's a licensed psychotherapist, clinical supervisor, and certified addiction professional. Evan is a licensed psychotherapist, master certified addiction professional, and certified interventionist, which is a great term, by the way. I love the way that sounds. It sounds like a little bit like a magician. He did his internship in mental health counseling in South Florida at the University of Miami, Jackson Memorial Hospital, and he received this clinical addiction training at the Hazleton School of Addiction Studies, which I believe is associated with Betty Ford.
Now, yeah.
And now also graduated as an EMT at Miami-Dade College. He's appeared as a special guest on Keeping Up with the Kardashians, season 3, episode 3, I believe is what it is.
Yeah.
Genuinely Gigi from the Shahs of Sunset, which I have no idea what that is, but maybe you can educate us on that. Crime Time with Dr. Debbie, The Bill Cunningham Show, ABC, NBC, CBS News, and the Huffington Post. He's lectured for the United Way, the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, and also Nova Southeastern University. Davey, stand up. All right. Thank you guys both for joining us. The first question I want to ask to you, Jessica, because we know Evan loves to talk, so I'm going to give you a chance to go first. Okay. Um, what is an interventionist? How did you guys get started in this, and how did you guys grow your practice?
That's a great question. I actually, prior to joining Evan, I was working in a psychiatric facility, and I have extensive background working in psych and all various populations. And then I joined Evan, so we could probably start there. And I want to bounce it back to Evan because he started Behavioral Health Solutions, and I joined him about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So go ahead.
But what is an interventionist?
So within our work, I would say that the interventionists, since joining Evan, um, we work with families, individuals, mental health and substance abuse, dual diagnosis, really just needing someone to come in who, a lot of families have tried this on their own, and they usually call us when they're in crisis, when the situation has gotten to the point that they're unable to manage. Um, and then they call us, and we work with the family, and we work all over the country. So wherever the need is, we actually work with the family. It could be one family member, it could be 12 family members, and we fly out wherever they are. And we work with the individual, the identified person, and the family. And ultimately, we identify a facility or the best placement for their loved one, and we get them there successfully.
How do you go about setting that up? Because I think a lot of people who've who have come to me about doing something like that, which I don't do. I refer them out, but they come to me with the sense that it's sort of like an ambush, that's the way that they felt when they were in it. The family is clearly just trying to do their best, but how
Mhm.
do you guys set that up so that it doesn't feel like people are piling on?
So it's a great question, and sometimes it does feel like that. When we work with a family, it's a very delicate situation because sometimes, most of the time, you are walking in, the family is very prepared. Um, Everything is set up prior to walking in to meeting their loved one. So the minute we walk in, we get started. And so oftentimes they could be just waking up in the morning, they could be ready to go out, and we all walk in. And so we sit there and we ask them if we could share some letters, some concerns, some thoughts. Most of the time they do sit because they're very appreciative of having the family and friends surround them. And there's other kinds of interventions as well, including an invitational model. where the loved one, it could be their son, their daughter, uncle, aunt, they're aware of an intervention, and we include them in the plan, and we include them in the idea of getting some help. And those are also very successful. And they don't feel as, like you said, ambushed, because it's more of a conversation, and we create a very supportive environment for the loved one. So they feel that it's not an ambush, and they feel welcome to have a say in what treatment looks like for them.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that question Dimitri asked, because I actually had that in my notes. So from the outside looking in, you guys interventionists look like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like you guys look like you're coming in a situation as an outsider, right? The person that is the focus of the meeting shows up in the setting, and they see their family members and somebody they've never seen before. And I guess from the first looking into it, it's them against me, and that person, they don't know who they are. So how do you get to, in few minutes, in a short time, how do you gain the trust of that person to let them understand that you're not part of a team, you're a mediator, you're in the middle? Because they don't know you. They know you from their families, contacted you, right? So short period of time, how do you gain that trust?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. I don't know if you want to, Evan, do you want to jump
please.
in?
Yeah. I'll jump in a little bit. I think going back to the question about what is an interventionist, I'm going to just touch it briefly. I think we are an extension of you, of the social workers, of the psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, where you're limited as to the scope of where you can take your work. And we literally intervene. We engage in the moment of crisis in the field. Our office is the field. It's the home. It's the streets of Dallas. It's a prison. It's Phoenix. It's Santa Barbara. It's Boca Raton, wherever. And our job is to help put together, in a very loving, supportive, and understanding and comprehensive manner, a plan of action where a family, loved ones may have felt frozen and even emotionally held hostage, and they're stuck, and the individual's stuck. And our job is to intervene in all that stuckness, and at the end of the day, come out the other side with the person that has been identified as the one with the issue, them getting some help. With regard to the concept of the ambush, we get that all the time. And at the end of the day, in our work, there really is, like in the Geneva Convention, when you wage war, you're supposed to follow the Geneva Convention. But as we've seen through history, there are some people out there that don't. And in our work, we're dealing with issues where we have to be able to work outside of the scope of what might be a standard, maintain our ethical approach, but at the end of the day, help a family that may feel as though they've been held captive, and an individual who's been held captive in his own mind, and fundamentally, in a very loving, supportive way, liberate everybody so that people can get some help and get unstuck and get to people like you.
Evan, why did you choose this particular field as opposed to any other area of mental health as far as counseling or anything else? Why interventions?
Yeah, so, and also our practice is expanding. We brought in a couple of new people too, which is very exciting, but simple answer within the time frame we can work with here is that when I first started, I did my internship at Jackson. I worked for a state agency, and I was working under a grant called TANF, Temporary Assistance Needed Families, needy families. And I would go out into the community and I would provide services. And I loved it. I loved being able to bring the help to people that might not otherwise walk into an office. So that was kind of the beginning of how this evolved. And then when I became a licensed counselor, I just didn't like sitting in the office. I really enjoyed being out. So I found a way to use my own personal pathologies, my own experience with addiction and mental health issues, my professional training and my difficulty sometimes with attention and being able to be out in the field and bring the help to them and then serve as almost a bridge to get people to your office, to treatment centers, to eating disorder programs all over the country. And so that's the kind of the foundation of how this all started. And then, as it's evolved, gone into a variety of different issues, like I said, eating disorders, compulsive gaming, sex addiction, attention deficit compulsive, mental health, substance abuse, and a whole bunch of other issues that we address. But that's the basic answer to your question.
Okay, I actually wanted to ask you this because you brought it up, your own mental health issues and struggles. I
Sure.
saw a podcast that you did where you talked about you being kidnapped by your
Yep.
father and being taken to
Yep.
Canada.
Yep.
And tell me, how has that guided your decision or affected your decision to go into this kind of field?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we all get into what somehow we're connected to in some way, right? Somehow. And I think for me, at the end of the day, one of the things that, I know Jessica and I are different people, but we have a lot of parallels with the appreciation and the recognition and the love of helping families. So for me, my childhood was pretty dysfunctional, disjointed, very pathological in nature, and the concept of kidnapping a child. So for me, when I see families that have been disjointed, torn apart by mental illness, by addiction, for me, helping to be a little cog, a little ball bearing in this chain of helping people and seeing people get together, it's an amazing feeling. For me, for example, just had a recent case where I can't get too deep into detail, but the person's father had passed when he was a little boy. Mom raised the kid by herself. So for me, being able to see that he was able to get some help, it was a dream of mom's to see that person get on the road to recovery. And it was done in the honor of the father who had passed as a child. This is the kind of stuff that really fuels me professionally, personally, because I see people kind of getting back in connection with their family, whereas my kind of childhood there was pretty disrupted and disjointed, and so it's a good feeling for me. It's karma stuff, and I'm very well caffeinated too, by the way.
It sounds like a lot of sublimation and and caffeine, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's real deal.
Jessica, I wanted to ask you this. Your website says, and I want to get this right, so I want to read it correctly. We specialize in breaking through seemingly impenetrable walls of resistance, denial, manipulation, and even bureaucratic red tape with our own unique, strategically compassionate, and unifying approach. Can you tell us specifically what that unique, strategically compassionate, and unifying approach is?
Great question. I would say when Evan and I, or one of us will go
I
in.
love that question, Jessica.
Well, that
Please.
Well,
let me
let her
continue.
answer it, and then you can answer it in your own way too.
Yeah, it's for both of you.
I would say we have a very unique approach. Oftentimes, we spend hours and hours and hours with the family, from the moment they call us all the way through meeting their loved one. We go probably the extra mile, way beyond, maybe what we have to do or what we should do. But, and again, I don't know what other people are doing out there. We just can discuss, and really do the best we can with the families. But we work, I'll give you an example. Sometimes, like I said, there's 12 people in a family. And there was one family in particular, and there was a lot, and they're all spread out. They're not living in the same, city or zip code. And just taking the time with each of them to get them organized for the day of the intervention. And sometimes it takes a few days. Sometimes the family could say, how fast can you move in? But, strategically, we also work to be as organized as we can, so that if there's any questions, everything is understood and answered prior to meeting with their family member. So I know Evan has another approach or another comment to make regarding the specific words. So
Please.
No,
What is your take on that?
yeah, the reality is I've learned so much from Jessica with regard to, and I think sometimes, you're working with somebody and they don't realize what an amazing job they do or what an amazing contribution they are. But I've learned so much from Jessica in terms of how to work with a psychiatric hospital or a court system or a hospital where they are not providing information to a family because they are protecting HIPAA, they're protecting the rights of the patient. And I believe, and working with Jessica and learning so much from her, we do an amazing job of working with federally protected privacy laws, statutes, but at the same time finding a way to also advocate for the benefit of that person getting some help. And sometimes there is a divergence between those two variables, between somebody wanting the protection of rights, somebody getting help, and in a very ethical, professional way, we're able to kind of bridge the gap so that people don't fall through the cracks. And I've learned so much from Jessica in being able to work with hospitals and how to deal with issues where we need to get messages across. We need to help people understand the depth of the issues, but at the same time, not overstep our bounds, nor in any way violate anybody's rights. And that's been an amazing way to help families, help individuals that might not otherwise have received any help because people were so afraid of communicating. And we have, I believe, done an amazing job working with Jessica on finding a way to do that in an ethical and appropriate and legal manner.
Mm-hmm. Understand. Now, I know that you talked about red tape, and one of the things that as Dimitri, Steph, and I, as treating professionals, sometimes deal with are barriers with insurance companies. So based upon the services that you're discussing, it would seem to me that this is something that's not covered by by healthcare insurance.
It's a great question. So our services are not covered by insurance,
Mm-hmm.
but because of our services, families that might not otherwise have been able to use the benefits that they have, they're able to actually use the benefits. And not only that, but potentially even maximize the use of those benefits because there's a more comprehensive, unified approach towards helping people and establishing some boundaries and accountability. So, for example, you might have the most powerful insurance policy in the whole wide world, but if you can't get your loved one to a program, it doesn't matter. And so we help to bridge the gap in providing those services. That's the best answer I can give you with regard to, our services privately paid, but we're helping families and people actually use the coverage that they have.
Sure. And is there any suggestions you have for people who are solely reliant on their insurance, who might not be able to have the means to afford private services? Because I don't take insurance in my practice either, right? And there are times when I have people who are in need of an evaluation, a forensic evaluation, and there are other avenues through the court that they can get those evaluations done at reduced fees and whatever it is, or the courts pay for it and the state pays for it. What suggestions do you have for people who might not be able to afford those private services, but still want to get help for their loved ones?
I think that reaching out to the programs that are covered by the care that the coverage you have, and then asking those programs that same question, and they may have community resources that they can help those individuals tap into. Mm-hmm. They may even have people within their own organization that could serve as an extension to help get that person into a program. But that's what I would recommend they do. They can find the program you want them to go to that's covered through insurance, and then ask those questions. What types of services or what type of referrals can you make to help me get my loved one to your program? And oftentimes a program will give you that guidance. That's one big one that I think a lot of people haven't thought about tapping into.
Understand.
So speaking of referrals and services, I guess what could we tell our listeners and providers in the mental health world about what steps people need to look at? When is it time to call an interventionist? I guess problems, family problems, and interpersonal problems have echelon, right? There's at times that might be that urgent, but what are the cues we should be aware of to say this is time to call somebody to come in? And then I guess the second part of my question is that most people think of interventionists as people that help family members with addiction. Besides addiction to substances, behavior, shopping, gambling, what other, I guess, top 3 or top 5 issues that you guys get called in to try to manage and help families?
Yeah, we're behavioral health interventionists. Our primary focus is mental health. Our world has exploded. Secondary, our substance abuse. Our number one focus is depression, anxiety, mood disorders, thought disorders, and our world is exploding. As far as the when, I want to defer that over to Jessica. Jessica, can you help out with that, please? When is the right time to call for someone like us to come and help? Jess?
Right. So in my experience, usually people call a therapist, a doctor, when things are pretty bad. And so I always say call when you start seeing maybe someone's responding and no one's sitting there, or maybe they're hearing voices. They could always call just for a phone call. It doesn't cost anything just to call and get some information. The sooner the better. And this way, if they want some information, we're always here as a resource. It's always good to stay connected. Oftentimes a family will call and then they'll call us back a month later, 3 weeks later. And at that time they said, you know what, we should have hired you guys 3 weeks ago, but we're calling you now. We definitely need some help. So I would always say the sooner the better. There's no harm in just picking up the phone and giving us a call.
And do you sometimes feel like the family members at times, I'm not sure if you ever encountered that situation, but is it sometimes you feel like the problem might not really be that one person, might be a family issue? So it's hard to come in a situation and say, oh, that person, everybody's against that person, or everybody's right and he's wrong. So how do you manage the family dynamics? Everybody has their own stories. Whoever tells a story is probably right or wrong, who knows? So how do you manage that, the interpersonal conflicts and he says and she says and you're in the middle?
So this goes back to your original question about trust, which I'm sorry I didn't answer before. Okay. In order to get the person that we call them the identified person. We call the person we're trying to get help the identified person, because we know that surrounding that identified person, there are a lot of other people there that have issues themselves, right? But in order to get that person the help that they need, we first have to have the people that surround them have confidence and trust in us that we're coming from a place of care, compassion, understanding, that it's not all about the paycheck, that we are eat, breathe, and sleep their loved ones' issues. Once we have demonstrated, once we've gained the trust of the people that surround that individual, then we're able to engage with the person that we're trying to get help for. Because the reality is, in order to help move this forward, we have to demonstrate to that person that once they say no, they're not going to get help, because that's usually the initial response. We then have to demonstrate that the people that love you the most, they are unified, and they've come to us to help see that you get the help that you need based upon their concerns. And we also let them know we're not here to judge you. We're not here to do a field assessment necessarily. We're here to help see that whatever concerns the people that love you the most have can be properly addressed, assessed, And then a treatment plan can be put in place if those issues, concerns are valid in nature. Most of the time, almost always, there are valid issues and concerns that need to be addressed. But that's kind of how we do it. We start off with the family. We then move on into the identified person, family, friends, coworkers.
And in your processes, is there a system where you validate the family's report? Let's say 5 siblings come to you and they all have something to say about the identifiable person. Do you vet that information before you go to the person that's the focus? Do you vet those report and see what's, who to believe or who to trust?
Great question. Yes, and all of our families, every member that's participating actually puts together, we call those impact letters that include all of the concerns, all of the issues. So we then are able to see that if we've got a convergence of all the people together, they're all okay. It all appears these are the issues. Then it helps us have greater confidence that those issues that they're valid. But once again, we let the individual we're going to get help for know that we are not there to say you've got depression, you've got anxiety, you've got bipolar. We're there to help the family communicate those issues, those observations in a non-judgmental, non-clinical, not like a WebMD trying to relate to somebody who's your loved one. We help the family share, I'm concerned because this is what we've seen. We want you to go get some help to address our concerns. And we want you to accept this gift of help. That's the flow. That's our process. And at the end of the day, that's how we do it.
Okay. Jessica, what's the most difficult intervention you've ever had to do?
The most difficult. We've had a few. We had one with DID and multiple.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We probably met maybe 7 personalities. I was on with Evan, and it was very, very interesting. There was just 2 people involved, the mother and the father, and this was dual, heavy duty substance use. And at the end of the day, we actually did get him some help. And I believe they did follow up with you, Evan, long after the intervention, and he's doing quite well. But without going too much into detail, that was probably the most interesting case and most
Because
enjoyable, I would say.
Okay.
The personalities are coming out all over the place, and we had to somehow get them on a plane and get them help. So that was challenging.
Wow, that's crazy.
Wow.
And get through the airport and get through.
Yeah.
Right, get through the airport. That was that was challenging.
You had to convince all the personalities.
Right. With
And to
the
leave-
IDs,
to
the
leave a
proper
lot
ID.
To leave a lot of,
They all agreed on a window seat.
Well,
There was agreement.
excellent.
Very
That
good,
that
very
brings
good.
me to my next question about location. You mentioned that your office is all over the place. What's the oddest place that you've ever done an intervention?
I'll let you go first, Jessica.
Okay.
Where-
So they're all most of them are, either in the home or, usually in the home. I would say the 2 top for me is outside of a jail.
Oh, yeah.
And Evan and I were together on that. And then the other one was about a 4-day, 5-day intervention where it started in one state. Couldn't find the individual. And then she was located and we flew to another state and we ended up finding her. And we did the intervention outside at a cafe or a restaurant, all sitting in a circle, having some tea or coffee, and it was the friends and the family. And that probably takes the cake. That one stands out as my number 1. The jail probably is number 2.
A 4-day intervention sounds less like an intervention and more like an exorcism.
That was a
That's
marathon.
yeah,
Correct,
that was
yeah.
tense.
That was intense.
And
Yeah.
you both survived. Amazing. Could have been a completely different movie back then.
We actually
Um,
we were going to keep going, if you can remember. And it was just 12, 13-hour days from starting at 7 a.m. all the way to the late hours. And they actually took breaks to take naps during because they were so tired. And Evan and I were like, we were just, come on, guys, we got to do it. And they said, you know what, let's just call it a night. So,
Wow.
it was probably, let's say 1 o'clock in the morning, and they just couldn't do it anymore. And we just got up the next day, 7 a.m., 6 a.m., and started all over again.
That's crazy. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to get you out on these two questions. You were on, I watched your episode of the Kardashians. Can you give the lay people an idea of what they are actually like when they're not on camera?
Yeah, they were extremely gracious. And I owe them a huge, I will always owe the family and the production company a huge set of gratitude for inviting me to be part of that. But they were a very loving family when I was there. And when I was there, I can't speak about how things are now, but when I was there, it was very real. And this is where Kim was just beginning to really make a lot of money, start to really become very successful. And the family was genuinely concerned how that would affect her and affect each other. But at the end of the day, the family mom, Chris, was very inviting. The sisters, they were all very appreciative, and even Bruce, who was Bruce at the time, now Caitlin, they were all just a really embracing, warm family and very appreciative of me coming out there to conduct a behavioral health intervention on Kim for compulsive behaviors. And even Kim was gracious about it. A little mocking at the end if you watch the whole thing, but at the end of the day, they were very appreciative of me coming out to help. And I will always be appreciative of them allowing me to be on the show, because for sure that has, helped get my word out. And I work with a lot of families from that. I can't disclose that. I can only disclose this because it was in the public domain. But from there, they connected me, or I was connected with a lot of other families and a lot of other people that there's no way in hell I can't disclose any of that because it's all private information. But
Correct.
it was a really great, opportunity, and they were a really great family.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to get you guys out on this. You did go to the University of Miami, and you taught at Nova. Sounds like you're a South Florida guy. I want to do an intervention on Mario Cristobal for taking knees at the end of games, because he refuses to take knees at the end of games, and it's already cost Miami a game this year. How do I go about doing an intervention with Mario Cristobal about taking a knee for the sake of the University of Miami fans?
It's a great question. We have done a very good job of staying away from politics, religion, and probably sporting too. But at the end of the day, probably bringing in the people that care about them the most, the coaches, family, staff, and probably, expressing concern, looking at the options, and then at the end of the day, asking him to do the right thing. And ultimately, you're saying, what is he supposed to do?
Take a knee.
He's supposed to take a knee at the end of the game when the game is over.
Then if that's the objective of the intervention, will you please accept this gift of taking a knee?
Okay. All right. Finally, tell us the name of your practice. Tell us where to find you, and how people can contact you and get the help that they need.
Yeah, sure. So our website is real simple. It's behavioralhelp.com. Behavioral health was 60,000. I bought behavioral help, which is 1,500, and it does us just fine. So it's behavioralhelp.com. They're welcome to call our main hotline, which is 305-467-8666. 305-467-8666, or just go to behavioralhelp.com and you can find us there. And we'd love to speak with you. We can give you a different direction, or we'd love to do that as well, a free consultation. But we do, and we also very much appreciate the opportunity to be on the Psych Effect as well with you guys. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Well,
Thank you.
For
That was,
joining
that
us
was fun.
today.
Evan Jarschauer, Jessica Meraz, Behavioral Help Solutions. I'm going to get that right. Thank you guys both for coming on. Great talk, and good luck to both of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.